Hi, and welcome to the Founders Journey podcast. I'm Greg Moran with my co-host Peter Dean for I think episode number. I think it's 5. It's getting there to the point where we're losing track. Left to start. We're going to be above our ability to count past 9, Peter, pretty soon.
Yeah, I think we lost some traction too. I think we may have lost my mother.
You mean as a listener? We didn't
anymore.
lose your mother. Just to clarify, we didn't lose your
Correct.
mother.
She's not listening anymore.
As a listener. All right.
Well, Chuck, I don't know. We'll see.
So the whole point of the
maybe
podcast,
we'll get him.
Founders Journey,
We'll get her back.
The whole point of the Founders Journey podcast is talk about tips and personal experiences that we've learned through our own founders journey to try to bring that knowledge to to those that are out there and going through the grind today of building something. So our guest today knows that better than just about anybody, and has had just an extraordinary founder's journey of his own. Our guest today is Joe Tassone. Joe and I go way back, probably older than probably longer than either one of us would like to admit our age. We went to college together at the State University of New York at Plattsburgh. So we've known each other a long time and kind of grew up as entrepreneurs together. And Joe's got an incredible story to tell. So Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Greg and Peter. I'm very honored to be on here, and I have certainly followed and admire both of your successes. So real excited to be part of this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And it's been about let's just say over 30 years, Greg. We've known each other.
Yeah, one point.
That's right. Which is pretty extraordinary since neither of us are actually, we're not even 30 years old yet, I know. For our age.
Is that what happened at
It
Plattsburgh, right?
Yes,
they age you. Plattsburgh ages you.
Preserves you, right?
Or preserves you. Yeah, either one. So
the great thing though is that this is a great point. Like entrepreneurs come from anywhere. You don't have to go to Harvard or Cornell to be an entrepreneur. You can come from anywhere. So you guys have proved that.
You don't even have to go to college to be an entrepreneur. I don't think.
True.
My
absolutely
good friend in business, I still consider him a partner, former business partner, never went to college. And very successful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think today, I was having a conversation with with a friend of mine about this the other day, and I think you look at the way that education has changed, right? What's available online today. I'm not talking about just traditional online education. I mean, like courses that are available through, on Twitter and things like that, where you can go and you can easily, be just as ready to start a business today by going and taking some basic course on accounting, a basic course on marketing, and figure out how to sell and figure out how to take a product to market. And you can do each of those classes in a 6-week cohort training, right? And so it's I think it's a different world, but it's a great point. So Joe, you have had an extraordinary journey along the way. Bootstrapped a company, which is just unbelievable, to 25 million in revenue. And an extraordinarily successful company in the wireless space. Talk about that. Talk about that ride. I mean, how did you get started? And what did that road look like as you built that business? And I mean, I know you're Inc. 500, and I mean, this was an uber successful bootstrapped company.
Yeah, it's so it was around. I worked for a company, SBA Towers, SBA Communications. They're one of the largest REITs in the world now. Great company. I still keep in contact with a lot of the people there, and it gave me a lot of. I was there for 7 years. I moved up the ranks to a director's position into tower development, and it was around 2005. And I was just at a point where I knew that if I wanted to get to the next level, I had to move down to the corporate office in Boca. The boss at the time, he was a good guy, but I really didn't agree with his strategies. And a really good friend of mine, Mark, he was talking to me and saying, we really got to go out and do this on our own. We have some connections in the city area, Metro New York, to do consulting for, doing permitting and site acquisition for like Nextel at the time and Verizon. And it took him about 5 months of cajoling me over drinks. I had a very comfortable position. I was fairly well compensated, full benefits, options. At the time, I had a 2-year-old. My wife was pregnant with my second child.
Good
And
timing.
it was just one day where I don't know, something came over me. And I said, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. I believe I was 33 at the time. And I remember sitting down and looking at my finances. And I think I had 20 or 25,000 in the bank. And I knew that I wasn't going to make any money for at least 3 or 4 months. So I stretched it out and said, okay, I'm going to go to the last dime, but let's do this. Mark and I literally put $1,000 each into an account, set up an LLC. Now, mind you, I never took a business course. And we started with some simple contracts doing consulting and milestones back in 05, going through 06. We had a couple good contracts where money started coming in. We were able to pay ourselves. And in 2007, there was a lot of, as you grow a company, you have some certain milestones and what I call injection points. And we were doing work, I remember, for T-Mobile. And this was the end of 06. We had a little project going with them. And I remember they used to be an industry newspaper, RCR, and we ended up putting an ad in. I remember I was like a $2,000 ad saying we were going to hire all these people in all these places. And it was kind of a little bit of a spin. And one of the guy we reported to, the director saw that. It's like, I saw him at a party. I didn't realize you guys were this big. Meanwhile, it's 3 of us, right? So talk to me after Christmas. And they handed us like a couple $1 million worth of business.
I'm going to hire 3 more people.
Because we were good at what we were doing. We executed on it. And then in 07, Metro PCS came into the market. And I remember being like middle of the summer and they handed us all this work and we were responsible for doing all the engineering, all the entitlement work. And we were how to pay the bills. And we had like 3-4 people. We had, 50,000 in our checking account. Now we're taking on liabilities, but we were able to just, get the receivables that were ahead of the AP. And next thing you know, we did a couple million a year and 3 million and 6 million and 7 million. And we had about 18 or 20 people. We had no debt on our balance sheet. And then in 2010, I just remember the day, all of our contracts were sort of at the tail end. And I started doing cash flow, 12-week cash flow reports and realized that we don't have enough money, with the income coming in to get it. So I remember having that like anxiety moment in my head.
I think they call that an oh shit moment, Joe.
Oh shit moment, right?
Yeah.
This is one thing, there's a lot of advice, we could talk for hours just on this. And it's so important as an entrepreneur, as a business person, to really keep an eye on your cash flow coming in and out. And we were so heavy in executing and operations because the owners of the company were in the trenches in the factory. And we weren't really focusing on building our pipeline. That's when I hear people, oh, on my pipeline, I got enough pipeline. You never have enough pipeline, right? You always have to build that energy and that momentum. And we got through it. We bootstrapped through it. And then we got into construction in 2011, 2012. And that we had some really bad year in 2012. We almost lost the business. Clients didn't pay us. We were taking on debt, and then we were able to, resurrect it. And so that's sort of the start of the, where I ended up. And I know we can go on to the other side of the hill. There's not much of a pleasant story.
There's but before we go there, I think there's something important, because when you talk about a bootstrapped company, right, I think one of the things that really stood out, and I know you and Peter were the 3 of us were kind of doing a prep for this yesterday, and you guys were talking about this, the importance of those 2 things that you just hit on, right? First being, when you're bootstrapping a company, managing that sales pipeline it's always important in any business when you're bootstrapping, to make sure that you've got that giant pipeline in place, and then to be managing cash as aggressively as you possibly can. If you can do those 2 things, right, it's amazing how far, as you certainly a testament to this, how far you can go on $1,000, right?
Yep.
That you started with. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. You said you didn't take business courses, but you just said balance sheet and cash flow and looking at projections on that's like one of the most important things I think that we need to learn as an entrepreneur. And you fill the gap in. It doesn't matter what your major was, or if you didn't go to college. We just talked about that. If you don't understand that, you're not going to get to 25. There's no way you could have gotten that far without.
Well, yeah.
learning.
I mean, the funny story, in the end of 05, we used an accountant, this guy, Bill, great guy, he's retired now. And he was calling me up. He's like, I need your balance sheet. And I'm like, what do you mean? I gave it to you. He goes, no, you gave me an income statement. I'm
Yeah.
like, what's the balance sheet? I've heard
Yeah.
of that before. I mean, we
Yeah.
were doing everything on Excel for like 2 years, right?
Yep.
And but I learned working for an SBA, I understood the forecasting and the metrics and how to accurate. I always was pretty good at that and understanding the value of forecasting and knowing where things are coming in. And I'm sure you've seen it in business. You have the optimist and the pessimist, right? The guy, oh, we're gonna do 80 million.
Yep.
You're like, you're out of your mind. And you got the guy that says you're gonna do 0 every quarter. So I had all those tools, and I'm pretty organized. And you just you learn by doing. And as an entrepreneur, and this is what people, most America is run by, I think, what, 50-60% of business are small businesses, right? And I don't want to sound like the victim here, but small businesses do not get a lot of favors from regulatory agencies. I mean, I can tell you, we were treated just as, we had a fleet of trucks of 10, we were treated like we were FedEx, right? And you learn, you don't have the know-how, the wherewithal, the resource to have 8 attorneys on staff and accountants. So unfortunately, you learn by making mistakes, and not filing something, not renewing a certificate of authority in a state, getting sued, cease and desist. I had that happen. When we first started, we didn't research our name well enough, right? So you start to learn by these things, and even when you're bigger, you're going to make mistakes. But when you're new, when you're learning, and that's why a lot of people that start businesses, they're thick-headed, right? Most entrepreneurs are, and they don't want to seek advice sometimes. And there's a whole network of advice. Greg got me an EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, where you have basically your own board of directors, and lack of a better word, and you hear people's experiences, and you have to have a plan too. That's a big thing. A lot of people, I was talking to a friend of mine, she's got a pretty good business, and what's your plan? Oh, it's all in my head. I have something. No, you have to put it on paper. You have to map out a plan. It doesn't have to be a 40-page McKinsey business plan, but you have to have goals and revenue targets and where you want to take the company. If you do not have a plan in writing, your chances for failure are exponential. And I believe you guys would agree with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, totally. I think, I think when you start to get into the planning process, right? I know one of the things, Joe, I know you and I have followed for a long time is like the 1-page strategic plan, right?
Habits,
the Rockefeller Habits. And if you haven't read the book, the Rockefeller Habits by Vern Harnish, just an extraordinary book about sort of planning at that kind of earlier, smaller growth stage business. And, a lot of times that's really what it takes. But I think that simplicity of trying to distill that down into that 1-page plan is just it's an enormously important thing, because look, we're entrepreneurs. We get distracted easily, right? We chase the squirrel all over the road if we're given the opportunity, right? To try to align with our team. And I know this was a big part of your story as well as you were building this. I mean, it was building that team, right? And to make sure that there's real alignment on the team about where you're going.
And I think what I've learned from Greg actually is you share that plan with another entrepreneur that knows your faults, right? They know, like, hey, you get a little wild-eyed over here, like, be careful, think about this, and kind of pressure test it with someone that's kind of done it before in another way. And that's super helpful to take it past someone else. And it makes you reset, but be careful. Entrepreneurs will all think the shiny thing is shiny, and they're like, oh, we should do that. That's great.
So you guys built this, you took it to the Inc. 500, you built this incredibly successful business, and then things changed, to say the least. Talk about the other side of this. After you got this thing to sort of the height that you took it.
So we we in 2013, we believe we did 12 million. 2014, we started taking on some debt, factor debt, AR receivable debt, high cost of debt. But we went up to 16 million. And then in 2015, I think it was, we were almost at 25 million. That was our pinnacle. But we weren't really making the bottom line numbers. We were doing, we were growing very, 20%, 30% a year. And in telecom, what we were doing, construction, installation services, building, because, it's a very eat what you kill business. It's hard to, it's not like a reoccurring revenue stream where, you're going to hit your targets. So of course, here we are 2015 at 75 employees. I think my burn rate was over $1 million a month, $1.5 million even. So of course, we put a plan together. What do you do when you're planning? Oh, we're going to do 20% more next year. We're going to do $30 million. Well, we had about 50% of our sales with one customer, and they started to pull back the reins a little bit, starting the new year. I also made a strategic decision to promote somebody in my company. He was the COO. I gave him all sales and operational responsibility. He wasn't the right guy, which I get into a moment. And I had my other guy who I kind of demoted, but not on a compensation level. So it started in January of 16, where, next thing you know, our expenses were outpacing our sales. So what do you do then? Well, we've done this before. Next month will be better, right? So, now you're burning through, more, and then 2 months, 3 months, and it just never got better. It got worse, actually. And then we ran into, I think there was, just a couple, it was like a perfect storm of crap that we were doing. And, when you're there, you get into it's like a deer in headlights, right? And this is my failure as a leader at the time, but also, through experience, we've been there and we recovered. So you always think of that, there's you think there's hope there in this thing. And I wasn't making the right decision. So I brought in a consultant, this guy, Paul Ferbrianti, of Corval, a great turnaround company. Paul's became a friend of mine. His mentor is Jim Malone, who was a 5-time Fortune 500 CEO. He just passed away last year. I mean, very, very bright company. I brought him in. I saw Paul's articles on LinkedIn, and I said, listen, we need help here. Something's not right. I kind of, and we had very good controls. We had very good processes, plans, all the T's and C's were in line. A lot of companies, they're messes and you could fix it, but we had all that stuff there, right? I mean, even we ran like $100 million company, so he gets in. So he spends a week interviewing everybody, doing his whole thing. And he sits me down, and it was like May or June of 2016. And we get this whole report there, and there were some cosmetic things we did. And he's like, listen, you got to get rid of your C-suite, your CFO, your COO, your chief strategy officer, who I don't even have one, get rid of them. I think you use some pejorative terms too. And, I was, we can't do that. He has a relationship with this company, and this person's going to sue me, and I owe this, and I just sat there, and I didn't make that critical decision. As a leader, as a chief executive officer, it really comes down to 3 or 4 major decisions in a year, right? If your CEO is down in the factory organizing boxes and worrying about, what the best payroll company, that's not what you're paid for. You're paid to make the decisions, right? And then I sat there, and it was fair. I was fearful of doing that. And I could say that I regret it now, but I'm much more happier. And, I want to share just a couple anecdotes, and it's not picking on people, because I believe also when you go through some bad stuff and people hurt you, you have to forgive. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's probably people out there I know that don't like me. And honestly, I could care less at the end of the day, right? I know I did try to do everything I could to be good to people and help people. And sometimes tough decisions have to be made. So, I have my chief financial officer. One day I get to the office, he's selling coats out of the back of his truck. Okay. Literally, guy I'm paying a 6-figure salary, is selling jackets. Okay. Out of the back. My chief strategy, a guy that I was a friend I trusted. I found out later on through email conversation after I got rid of him, he started his own company, a new division over a competitor, was taking people from us, soliciting, all that bad stuff, it's like stab you in the heart. And then my chief COO at the time, again, you talk about, we talked about it yesterday, about just bad decisions and bad people in positions. Not that he was a bad guy, not that he wasn't good at certain things, but you gave a person with his own agenda in power of the company. And it turned out, a lot of it turned out he was a bully and all that. But, some certain things, like we had like 4 or 5 customers. We had the Salesforce tool, right? Salesforce, right?
Yeah, sure.
And he had a business development person. They didn't meet customers. They just ran Salesforce report. We had the best Salesforce reporting probably in the country. We're meeting with 50 customers, right? And he was like, here it is, the Titanic is sinking. And he's like rearranging the deck chairs. Well, we got to get priority. Maybe we got to get this tool and this software program. Instead, well, how about cutting 7 people? We did cut some people. And then you also have you also look now and it's more of a buzzword than it was even when I started in business, is emotional intelligence, right? You can get people that are smart and people that are capable, but
Yeah.
you need people, especially in a leadership position, that can empathize with people and that can make decisions and not get emotional. Getting an email on a Sunday that I'm stressed out, I can't come to work tomorrow. That's not the leader that you want. Could you imagine Eisenhower saying that on the eve of Normandy? Right? Think about that. And then these are the people in the world, and they're not bad people. They're just not in the position. And I failed.
Yeah.
I was the
Yeah.
captain of the ship and take full responsibility for that. But you learn.
Yeah. Which,
Yeah.
what's interesting is you see this all the time, right? And I've been in this situation myself as well, where, the business starts to grow, and it starts to grow at a pace that, you're dramatically outpacing the leaders that you have in a business, right?
Their growth.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And when the business growth starts to get out of proportion to the amount that somebody is growing personally, that's where you really run into problems, right? Where somebody could be a great hire, a year prior, but suddenly that business growth is just, things are getting so complicated. If you're not learning at the same pace that the business is growing, that disconnect just grows wider and wider, right? And it can be lethal for
them. And then it, creates pressure, and they feel, like they can't, live up to it. And then they start acting kind of funny. It sounds like you had some of that, like some negative things come out because the pressure is there and you feel incapable of supporting it. And, it's what happens. And that's the hardest thing. That I think you brought up a really important point, is it's kind of lonely, because your responsibility is to all the 100 employees, right? All of them. And the fiscal responsibility of the business. But these are people that you grew it with for a long time. So it's so hard to say, how do I make that change? How do I go and say to someone that I did this with, and we hit the highs, and, we went on this journey that was amazing, that was life-changing. And now it's time for them to go. That's not an easy thing to do. I know that you kind of beat yourself up a little bit about it, but it's so hard to make that decision. And we talked about, waiting too long.
You're 100% right. And anybody who's been successful, even like a great Jack Welch, right, will make fun of himself of it. I've been in thousands of hundreds of people in entrepreneur groups, right? And I can't tell you the number of times where people sat there and there was a disaster sitting on their team, and they just wouldn't let that person go.
Yeah.
And what you learn, and anyone who likes to do that shouldn't be in leadership. It's tough, right? I mean, you have certain people.
Exactly. You're right.
And that's them. But as a leader, you've got to, and I learned this the hard way, is that you have the responsibility to your company, your investors, maybe the rest of the employees, your family, and you have to make the tough decisions. And I've made them, don't get me wrong, but it's not easy, but you have to do it. I don't want to compare to going to war, but I think there's a lot of analogies with military. You can't be afraid to make those decisions, and you're not always going to be right. We're human beings. And
you're not always going to be liked when it happens, and it going in. That's what you talked about.
Learn over time. Everyone wants to be liked, right? But there's going to be people that don't like. And
it's just
do the best you
what
can.
it is.
And you try to be empathetic and show your vulnerability. But it's definitely something you learn. You learn through failures. And one of the things I say is, adversity, and I'm writing an article on this, which we'll plug later, is really the building block of life. You have to have adversity, and when you go through a bad time, you really learn more about yourself. You learn about the people that you thought you can count on that aren't there for you. You're surprised by people that come to you, and you get through it, and you're better for it. And back in when I was back in May of 17, when I shut down the company. And, I keep a journal for the last 20 something years. And a lot of my entries in 17 and 18 began, I don't know how I got out of bed today, and it was hard. And, but I did, and I started a new company the week after my company imploded, Sencor, in an industry, in the solar development industry. I didn't know anybody. I really didn't know much, but I knew I had some relationships. There were some synergies there, and we're doing pretty well now. Then I dovetailed it to another company above grid with some great partners. Now we're doing national development and other consulting in a very booming industry. And I want to say that I'm almost back where I was, but much happier, much I don't have a huge overhead. I never want to get there anymore.
Yeah.
But back in I don't know if it was you asked me, but this I remember I went to SUNY Plattsburgh to speak to the entrepreneurs group there, and I went through my story, and the professor, good guy, asked me, he's like, well, why don't you just get a job? And I don't remember after my failed, right, and I don't remember what I said. I probably had some good answer, but then I really began to reflect back on that. And there's nothing wrong with getting a job, and I had a really good job offer, a really good salary and benefits, and mind you, I didn't know how I was going to make money, right? I went from being comfortable to almost losing it all and having to zero income, right? I mean, I had some other investments and liquidated a lot of things that you're not supposed to liquidate, right? And I just thought to myself, I did this. I did this already, right? I built up a company with no experience.
Yeah.
Now I have experience. I can and I will do it again. And I also, my second thing I really thought about is I can't accept the fact that I'm going to work for somebody else and I'm only going to get a small percentage of my value, my creativity, my work ethic. And I'd rather put it all in and give it my all and reap the rewards. And there's risk involved. It doesn't always work out, but you have to be optimistic. And, I'm here today, and it's still a grind every day. But I like what I do. I love the people that I work with. I'm blessed in a lot of ways. And, there's this myth out there that, you have to love what you do. And, I think that's a little bit misleading. I believe you have to have a passion for what you do. Everyone loves it. I mean, you can't love what you do every day, right? I mean, I like what I do, but there's it's like training, right? I mean, Greg, you're a triathlon. It's exciting crossing the finish line, but 95% of it's a grind. And that's what work is. It's a grind. Every day you get up, you work, you try to provide, and it's exciting. It's exciting winning an award. It's exciting, getting a distribution. But you have to have that passion and you have to have a vision. And that's what I lacked in my other company. So that's just some takeaways, and I got a bunch more of them too. But
I mean, it's just such a compelling story, and the way you go through it, I think, is just so authentic. It's because it's something that I mean, certainly I know that the three of us on this call can all relate to. We both, Peter and I, have been there, and also in varying stages. And I think anybody who's made a career of being an entrepreneur, like you have, and like Peter and I have, I mean, these things are bound to, these things are just bound to occur. It's just simply part of the journey. But when you can actually start to reflect on it and say, we've had those moments. I know, I mean, speaking for myself, and I know Peter and I, have been close friends for years and years. And I've talked about this a million times. I mean, I think any entrepreneur has those moments where you wake up in the morning and say, I don't have any idea how I'm going to make it through this day. I have no idea how I get out of this bed. All I want to do is stay right here, right? But you do. And that's what that journey is all about, right? I mean, that's the power of what, of what being an entrepreneur, what separates, I think, founders who go and take action versus the other 99.99995% of the world that talks about it, right? That's the difference right there.
I would say one thing when I listen to you talk about it, I think, and this is what I'm interpreting, so tell me if I'm right or wrong, but it seems like after you've done it, and I've experienced this myself, like I know I can generate outcomes, right? I've already proved that to myself in my last company, even though I ended very similar to you. And so it sounds like you had this scenario where you felt, I'd rather put faith in me. I trust that I can produce an outcome. I have enough confidence there that I'm going to go do it. Now, it's not going to come right away, and you already know that, but you did it and you just followed through. Is that kind of, you felt confident in yourself and believed that you could do it?
Yeah, I did. And I can't lie to say that there was periods
Just doubts.
that
Yeah.
where I lost confidence, and it was shameful. I mean, it's embarrassing, to have that happen, humiliating. But I didn't let that drag me down. I mean, I was there. I went through that phase for a month or two. Wouldn't really tell anybody, and then I
Yeah.
got really angry at people, and that's when I realized to forgive.
Yeah.
And really, I'm not gonna give somebody else the power, and people do things
Yeah.
just to do it, right? And you just have to, it's about, there's so many lessons that come. I also learned too is chase the passion and the money will come.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all in this for money, right? Anybody who
Yep.
lie, I mean, you do it to do well and to provide for your family, right? That's what I believe being a man
Mhm.
is. You provide, but you also, you got to do what like you're passionate about, and the money will come, hopefully, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
and then
We've had other
sometimes
guests say that.
you do everything right, and sometimes you get smacked in the face, right? A bad economy, recession, and sometimes
Yep.
you trip a bunch of times, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just landed that deal, right? And we all been there, and it's just really about one other thing I learned too is, and I talk about this a lot, is about balance. You hear all this, and maybe see younger
Yep.
generations talk about balance, work life balance, right? And I go with Jack Welch says. I go back to him. It's no such thing as balance. There's choices, and choices have consequences. We all have enough time in the day to do what we need to do to be successful. If the secret to success isn't hard. You work hard, you provide value, you take initiative, you have a bias for action. You do those 3 or 4 things. We've talked about this in our pre-interview yesterday, guys. How many people we've had where they didn't have the resume, the pedigree, the experience. You get them in a little rocky, in 2 years they're running a division for you. They're a
Mhm.
rock star. And then
Yeah.
on the flip side, we've all had people come in with the 4-page resume, and you're miserable 3 months later because they don't have the values. And it's also about doing the right thing in business. I mean, every
Yeah.
day we are challenged, our values are challenged, our ethics are challenged. And if you always try to do the right thing, it's usually going to work out for you. And sometimes, even if you do the right thing, there's going to be perceptions that you didn't do the right thing. But every day, those are my partners. I'm aligned with really good people that share the same values. And we work hard, we're stern, we negotiate tough. But at the end of the day, you got to do the right thing in business. There's a lot of scumbags out there, shysters. We've all seen them. And you may win a few battles, but you're ultimately going to lose the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you had this wild ride. You got the rocket ride up. You had the fall on the other side of it. Now you're back rebuilding and and building up stronger than you were even prior with all of these, with this sort of wealth of lessons learned, right? And you're writing about it. I mean, talk about the newsletter a little bit. I know because this is something I get every week. I think Peter does
Yep.
as well. And talk about, because what I love about this, Joe, is what you're doing every week is you're sharing these experiences for other people.
Yeah.
I don't know, how did it start? Like, was this kind of a cathartic thing for you that you?
I always like to write, and I never, thought of myself as a good writer. So it takes me a lot of time. You take a lot of time every week, and
Sure.
I read a lot, and one of the persons, Robert Glazer, I'll give him a
Mhm.
plug, Friday Forward, and I know
Yep.
Robert, EO guy, and I started seeing those stories years ago, and I really liked them, and I started just writing the same way he started, just emails to my team like a year
Yep.
ago, few people, and then I started adding a few more people, and I started getting some good, all on email, right? Like there's
Yep.
a couple hundred people. Hey, listen, I like to self promote myself too. We all, but I had a story to tell,
Yep.
and I started putting on LinkedIn. And I started getting some good responses, and then in the new year, I went on Substack, which is just a medium to write. It's just a
Yep.
a blog type of thing, and now I have a decent amount every week. The subscribers are growing. I'm getting a lot of positive response, and I really enjoy doing it. And a lot of it is I always try to interject about one of my own stories, because I believe in being vulnerable. You have to be out there, and that's how people relate to you. And I like doing it, and I don't really have the goal. I guess I want to write a book someday, and the goal is just to grow subscribers and have fun with it, and if it makes me feel good. If one or two people a week say, hey, thanks, I really needed that, good article.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff out there now, right? And you can't read everything. And I guess that's the start and the end of it.
It's
Greg,
just
it
so
seems like a theme. It seems like a theme. The entrepreneurs trying to give back to that community. It's something we've heard multiple times now.
Yeah, well, and that's how this whole podcast started, right?
I honestly, I really love, and it sounds so, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Not condescending, but I really like helping other people. I really do. I get a kick out of putting connections together and helping other people. I really do. I generally enjoy it. I believe in life that there's people that it's a Stephen Covey thing. They look at life as being, some people look at life as being like scarce, right? There's one pie, and if you get a piece, we live in an abundance world, right? There's enough knowledge, there's enough love to go around. We're all competitive creatures, but the more you share and the more you help with people, and really that's the definition of true character, right? Helping others without the expectation of something in return. We all know the quid pro quo thing. Oh, I'm doing your podcast today, Greg, but that means, next week you got to do my friends over here. And, it all comes
well,
down.
I do. Yeah, but you did tell me I need to fly to New York and mow your lawn or something.
Well, I do need, there is.
And that was a little uncalled for.
There is,
Yeah.
all of this.
He's not that good a mower. I tried to have him do that. It's not good.
I got a couple prime dinners Peter's going to take me to. So.
Well,
yeah.
so this is awesome. Like I said, you and I have known each other for so many years, and our paths have been parallel, for so long now. It's just such a kick having you on here, and it's awesome to still be doing it after, you say it's 30 years. I think it's 27 at most.
No, guys, I really, this really made my day, and I'm just really honored to be included with you. And I definitely admire both of you, Peter. I want to get to know you better.
Yeah.
And
I'm looking forward to,
until Greg throws himself in another business that he's working 90 hours a week on. I'll try to get him on the phone a few times.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. That's all I have to say. I'm not doing it.
All right.
You can mark my words on this podcast.
Okay.
You got it on.
Joe and I know.
Tape.
All right. We have it on tape. I can't wait for that day.
So before we forget, Joe, I can't recommend this newsletter any more than I am. I mean, definitely, if you're listening to this, go subscribe to Joe's newsletter.
Yeah, it's
how do they do it?
It's joetassonejr.substack.com. Joe, JOETASSONEJR.SUBSTACK.com. It's called Monday's Motivation. I got to get a better website, I guess, but that's what they gave me. So
we'll stick it in the show
man.
notes, and we'll stick it in the show notes. And when we send this out, when we send it out on Twitter, we'll stick the link in there as well.
Thank you so much.
Twitter and everything. Yeah, and Joe, if somebody wants to contact you directly, how do they do it? I mean, look, there's a wealth of knowledge there. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, are you on Twitter or LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn. Just look me up on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I got to start using that a little bit more. But LinkedIn is the easiest way to find me, Joe Tassone Jr. Above Grid. I got to get my company, Above Grid, solar.com is our solar development company. So you guys could find me there too.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, Joe, this is great. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Founders Journey podcast.
Thank you very much, guys.